Good evening. Can everyone hear me all right? I'm probably the most nervous of all the speakers, but I'll do my best. About 22 years ago, I was a junior here at Conval. My brother was a senior. That summer, unfortunately, he was struck by a car and died 12 days later from his injuries. Ever since that happened, I sort of envisioned myself doing something to pay tribute to him and the way he lived his life. I hadn't found that opportunity until about 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, my wife and I were spending a well-deserved winter in Siesta Key, Florida. We had intended on looking for about a 30-foot sailboat and potentially sailing around for a couple of years until we had children. So I was looking at listings for sailboats in the area, and everything was pretty far away. Hour, 2 hours, not quite what we were looking for, but nearby, about 5 minutes away, there was a boat for sale. And it was a 44-foot Wellington. It was too big, it was too much money, but it was really close. And I decided to show my wife what a 40-foot sailboat looked like. So I called the gentleman, and his name was Ron. And Ron invited us over to his home. So we went over to his house, and he brought us out back, and he showed us his beautiful 44-foot Wellington that he and his wife had spent about 20 years, 8 months out of every year, sailing around the world, which has been a dream of mine since I was very young. So I made it apparent to Ron within about 20 minutes that I wasn't going to buy his boat, that it was too much boat, and he easily could have just said, thanks for coming, and sent us on our way, but Ron, and I'm so glad he did, I'm sure he is too, he showed us his boat and shared he and his wife's adventures with us for about 4 hours. We had lunch with them. His wife spoke fondly of their experiences with my wife, Emily, and it was a pretty amazing afternoon, basically picking the brain of someone who has essentially lived my dream. So our 4 hours came to an end, and my wife and I were leaving. And something in the back of my mind just said, you know, something's not right here. I don't understand. They've had this boat for 20 years. They love it. They seem to be healthy. They're having a great time. I just couldn't understand. And I'm a curious person, and I ask questions when I have them. So we were literally halfway in the car, and I said, I don't understand. Why are you selling your boat? And Ron said, I don't really like to tell people because I don't want anyone feeling bad for me, but I have stage 4 renal failure. And I thought to myself, wow, what a shame, such a lively spirit, basically getting ready to go on dialysis and live his life in a very restricted way. My wife, who knows me very well, thought in that moment, Tim's going to try to give this guy a kidney. So we left, and I couldn't help but in the back of my mind just think of all the adventures that Ron had had and how it sounded like he had lived life to the fullest. And I also just thought, wow, how cool it was once he found out that I wasn't going to buy his boat, that he spent like his whole afternoon with us. So I spent the better part of the next 2 weeks looking into what it takes to give someone a kidney. And what are the chances even, what are the odds of any of us being a perfect match for one another? And the odds are, I've heard different figures, but the highest figure, which I'm going to use now, is 1 in 100,000. So after researching, I'll say diligently, but it wasn't really diligent. But after about 2 weeks, I called Ron and I said, Ron, I'll get tested to see if I can give you a kidney. And Ron was super appreciative, and he had been on a deceased donor list, which made him only a candidate for a dead donor's kidney. Typically they last about 4 years, then you're removed from the list, and it's your last chance. So I signed up to see if our blood matched, which is the first start, and Tampa General Hospital's first requisite is that you wait 6 months to give a sample of your blood, which I thought was quite silly. But I waited the 6 months, I sent in my blood. Ron's blood didn't develop antibodies against my blood, and we signed up for the week of testing in Tampa. So a few months later, I went to Tampa, got tested, go through about a week of testing, psychological as well as physical, and I was surprised more that I passed the psychological. So, a few days after testing, I'm in Ron's driveway with my wife, Emily, and Ron, and we get a call from the transplant center. This is where I was getting choked up, so bear with me. So, the woman called, my living donor advocate called and said that I was a perfect candidate in every way to give Ron a kidney. And I thought, awesome. And then she told me that they weren't going to let me do it. They said because I'm a carpenter by trade, and that I was once diagnosed as having ADD, which I'm pretty sure is true. Well, they said because of those two things, they weren't going to let me donate to Ron. And I thought, what a travesty. And I gave Ron the news. He took it pretty hard. I asked if there was maybe some further tests I could do to, eliminate their concerns, and they said no. If a flag is raised, that's it. You can't be a donor. I told Ron, I said, honestly, I feel like Superman could go in there and they would find something wrong with him. And Ron said, I thought you were Superman. So I was due to leave the next day, and Ron took us to the airport, and I was pretty angry. It's hard to know that you can help someone, but they won't let you. So I told Ron, let's go someplace different. And he had some connections in Virginia, and we went to Enrico Transplant Center and sent them all the information that had been gathered on me in Tampa, told them why they didn't want to let me be a donor for it. And we traveled there, and went through all the tests. And about 2 weeks later, I was driving my car, and I got a call from my living donor advocate, and she said, you're a perfect match for Ron, and if you want to go ahead with the surgery, just go ahead and make the appointment. And I, pardon me, but shit just got real. It was the first time in 2 years that I had really, instead of being sort of a, just not knowing or what was going to happen or the next step, it was like, hey, you can do it. So I thought about it for about a day, and I called Ron, and I told him that we were a go, and that we would do it. And we scheduled the surgery for January 8th, 2013. So I just want to add that Ron has renal failure, or had renal failure, because he was given a medication when he was about 35 years old, and it completely destroyed his kidneys. So I go to the airport to fly to Virginia, and there's a huge snowstorm, and all the flights are canceled. And it's pretty time sensitive that I get there within the 24 hours. So I go with our backup plan, which is me getting in a rental car and driving to Virginia. So I did that. I made it in 12 hours, straight drive. Ron and his wife were eagerly awaiting my return. And the next day we got admitted to Enrico Transplant Center, and we got ready to go. Got woken up the next morning, prepped for surgery, went into surgery, and I woke up. And my first question was, how's Ron doing? Ron was doing great. It's incredible. Like, from stage 4 renal failure, it's about, I think, a 10-hour surgery, like 99% renal function. And you couldn't even tell from my blood work that I had even given a kidney. Right off the bat, it was amazing. So I spent 3 sort of pathetic days in the hospital, waking up in the middle of the night, urinating all over myself from my dysfunctional catheter, and vomiting from morphine and feeling pretty silly in front of the cute nurses. So I spent 3 days in the hospital, got discharged, and Ron's wife, Emily, who's fantastic, took care of both of us. I was out of the hospital in 3 days. She was my everything for 3 weeks. Ron soon got out of the hospital in about a week, and I got to see him eat bacon for the first time in 20 years. Got to see him have a banana for the first time in 20 years. Pretty incredible, and I also, we got to know each other even more, and I got to realize just how incredible both of them are. So, I guess it all comes down to the fact that the thing that impresses me most was just all of the people involved and the sheer odds of it all coming together the way it did. Whenever I tell the story, people always ask me if Ron gave me the boat. I tell them that, the whole idea was for Ron to keep his boat and for him to sail and live his life the way he had done before instead of wasting away on dialysis. And that's my story.
Yeah.